Hi everyone, welcome to the Testing Trainer YouTube channel. In this session, we are going to discuss software testing lifecycle. So in previous session, we discussed what is software development lifecycle and software development lifecycle. What are the different types of software development lifecycle and where the testing fits in the software development lifecycle. Right now, in this session, we are going to see about what is software testing lifecycle. Now, let's go back to the software development lifecycle. Okay, so here, so the testing is after the implementation phase, right? Even in the agile models, it will be after the implementation. Now, this software development lifecycle, it's about the whole software product. We start from the requirement analysis, design, implementation, and you finish everything, right? For a whole software product. Now, the testing life cycle is nothing but like how we do a life cycle, like a life cycle for software development. We have a similar life cycle for this phase. So, if you put an arrow here, and then there will be a life cycle for testing. That's what we are going to see now. Now in software, this is a software testing lifecycle. In this lifecycle, we have different phases similar to the software development life cycles. Okay. Now let's see the phase one by one. So similar to the software development lifecycle, here also we'll like that the phase starts with requirement analysis and it moves to test planning and then test design and test data setup, test execution, reporting, and defect logging and test closure. Now, in software testing lifecycle, the requirement analysis is one important phase. So, consider the previous example, like we discussed about the student web application. I'll just go back to the example. So here we have an application, and we discussed a lot about requirements. So after you get the requirement, think about it, like let's take one requirement example and let's see how the testing life cycle for that requirement is going to go. Okay, so let's take login. Okay, so for this application they have designed a login page, and then if a user enters the login username and password, so he should be able to log in. Now this is a requirement of login. Now, in the testing lifecycle begins with the requirement analysis. Okay, so you have to analyze the requirement and you have to come up with questions. If you have questions, you have to come up with it, and then you have to, as a tester, you have to see where the defect lies, right? So you will be doing a lots of analysis on the phase, understand the gaps in the requirement, if there is a gap, if there is not a gap. So you have to think all about it in the requirement analysis phase. Once you are confident that okay, I analyzed the requirement for the login and it's all looking good for me, I don't find any gap and I'm all good, then you have to move to the next phase, which is test planning. So once the requirement analysis is done, like you have to plan it. Now it works. I'll just give a example. Test planning is nothing but you have to plan a work. Okay, how I'm going to do it. Okay, but this test planning phase is different for waterfall model and also for agile model. Okay, it's different, two different things. In terms of waterfall model, we have to do a big lot of a test plan because you know very well that testing will only happen after all the requirement analysis, design, implementation, everything is done, the code is fully ready, then you'll be doing a testing. So in that way you have to plan it differently. But in terms of a agile model, so the planning will not be like, for example, that detailed level plan, but you may need to know what are the activities you are going to do and how are we going to do it. okay, and then estimation and all those things. It will be a part of the test planning will also be a part of each and every activity, as I said earlier, in terms of the agile models. Okay, now you for now you just think in a high level way, like it's a planning phase. Okay, now you clarified and also you refined the requirements, and you are confident and you are just ready to go with the requirements. Now test planning is done. Now next phase is test design. What is test design? It's an interesting phase, right? So we have to write the test cases or test scenarios for it. Okay, so we are going to see lots and lots about these things in the next slide. In high level, test design is nothing but writing a test cases for that scenario, for a functionality. We call it as a functionality. Let's take login example as a functionality. For a login, you write test cases. That's what that is the activity that will be happening in the test design phase. Now test data setup. Now you have designed the test cases. Now we need some data, different set of data to actually perform the test execution. Okay, so the test data setup will be happening in the test data setup phase. So example, you have login. So one example of test data setup is usernames and password. So if you need to give a different usernames with a positive and negative combination, so you have to prepare with the data. Similarly for a password. Okay, that is test data setup. Again, there are separate sessions are there for the test data setup and test design. So don't worry too much here. Okay, just understand in a high level. Test execution, this is where the actual execution happens. Execution in the sense you actually type the username and password and click login button and check whether you are able to proceed. Okay, that's the execution. So if you find any issues in the test execution, then there are two things. So you'll be doing a test reporting and also like defect logging. Okay, if think about it as a if and else. If all goes well, test execution is nicely completed, then it will go to test reporting. Okay, now no, it is not nicely completed. You found a defect, like you entered a valid username and valid password, you click login, it's working. But you have entered an invalid username and password, you click login and user is able to log in. Oh, he should not be able to log in, right? Yeah, so then you raise a defect and you track the defects. All those activities happening here. The final activity is a test closure. So in a waterfall, it will be like a very big grand activity of test closure. Like you have to have an exit criteria, you have to check all the exit criteria, make sure it's all working well and good, and then you close it. In terms of agile based models, so test closure will be like mainly of the acceptance criteria. A section will call acceptance criteria in the user stories. So you check all the acceptance criteria. For example, user should be able to log in with the valid user credentials. User should not be able to log in with the invalid user credentials. This is a sample example of acceptance criteria. So you'll be checking, okay, all both functionalities are working, those two acceptance criteria are working, and then you will be closing the story. That is, you will be closing the requirement or testing, right? So those things will be happening in the test closure area. So this is software testing lifecycle. So it's not too hard, but the people who already knows the testing, what each phase and how it works, and people who doesn't know about the testing, and for you it looks like, okay, I got little bit, but how does it work? So all those details, so we have all the separate sessions for all this phase, so we can see each and everything in the upcoming slides. Okay, but for now, a quick summary of software testing lifecycle is nothing but the lifecycle activities of the software testing. Okay, it begins with requirement analysis. You analyze the requirement there, and then you do a quick test planning, and then you write some test cases or test scenarios to do the testing. And what are all the data you require for to perform the test execution, you have to prepare it in the test data setup phase. Then you actually perform the test execution. If the test execution is 100% passed and successful, you do a test report and close the testing. If you have seen some defects, you raise the defect, log the defects, tracking, and then you move to test closure. Right. Thank you so much.